What on earth is my husband doing? Today is the big day, our daughter Emily's wedding. Almost all the guests have gathered. Despite saying he'd come later, it's unbelievable that her father, Michael, hasn't shown up just before the ceremony. I've called him several times already. Finally, he answered.
Finally! Where are you now?
Me? I'm on a trip with my ex-wife. I was speechless. Of all the days, he chooses today to pull such an awful stunt. He told me to just make some excuse to the relatives and hung up. It felt like he had tainted our precious daughter Emily's special day, and I felt terrible. A week after the wedding, Michael called me. He was very angry, probably because I had been ignoring him.
Hey! Where the hell are you now?
Why should I have to tell you that? Furious at my response, Michael lost it. He was shouting incoherently. It was only natural that he'd lost his composure to this extent. After all, I had razed his house to the ground. My name is Kelly. I'm 52 years old. I work part-time at a grocery store. Being a modest and quiet type, I was single until I was 30. I thought I'd probably never get a chance to marry, being as introverted as I was. Back in my youth, I lived my life looking downwards, engulfed in such negative thoughts. Michael was introduced to me by a friend of my late mother. One day, out of the blue, she contacted me, insisting I meet him. I agreed to meet just once and was surprised to see he had brought along a child.
Wait, you didn't know? That lady, she's a bit scatterbrained.
Michael was holding a baby girl about a year old. Her name was Emily. When Emily suddenly started crying, she stopped as soon as I took her in my arms. Michael's previous wife was quite fickle, having left him after finding another man. Emily needed a mother. I agreed to become her mother at Michael's request. The early days of our marriage were definitely happy. Busy with taking care of Emily and work, the days flew by. We lived in my house at the time. A house took over from my father Tom. It was a bit old but a cherished home with a garden. Life was hectic, juggling home, work, and the daycare. I think Emily was about 5 years old when I started noticing a change in Michael's once quiet demeanor. He began to disregard my requests and started drifting into bad habits.
Cut it out! If you've got time to drink, help out with Emily or around the house. Stop nagging. It's a woman's job to take care of another woman. Household chores have always been women's work.
Michael ignored our needs. He would go out drinking every weekend and come home in the early morning. Eventually, he even started smoking again.
Come on. The house is going to smell of smoke, right? It's not good for Emily, so please don't smoke. Stop fussing over a bit of smoke. Really, you're such a nag.
Too much arguing would make Emily cry. When Michael started smoking, Emily and I had to retreat to another room. This was my own house, yet why did we have to be the ones to escape? The house quickly filled with the smell of tobacco, and I was frustrated beyond belief. Unable to stand it any longer, I finally decided to consult my father.
So, the house smells of tobacco, and things with Michael are getting worse. I don't know what to do. Sorry to bring up our marital issues.
Thank you for telling me. Invite Michael over. I'll talk to him too.
Michael was quite nervous when we visited my father's home together. My father was a wealthy man with influence in many areas at that time. Michael was well aware of this and was visibly shaken by the summons. Even his company's executives warned him not to upset my father. Although it's not right to meddle in a couple's affairs, my father's voice was grave.
You should really quit smoking, Michael. It's not good for your health, and certainly not for Kelly and Emily. Could you please not make my daughter so sad?
All right.
I'm sorry.
After being scolded by her father, Michael sincerely admitted his faults. He genuinely apologized to me and our daughter Emily, and the atmosphere softened. But when we got back home, everything was back to normal. Now he sneaks around to smoke. Moreover, Michael started visiting my father alone, claiming they needed to discuss men's business about a project he wanted to pursue. I felt uneasy, but since my father said nothing, I just let it be. Just when Emily became a junior high school student, I discovered Michael's affair. Moreover, after hiring a detective, it appeared that the other woman was his ex-wife, Sharon. Starting a relationship again with a woman he was supposed to have divorced, what kind of nerve is that? Her name is Sharon. Sharon is quite beautiful. I wondered why he had divorced such a beauty. Anyway, I didn't want our sensitive daughter to suffer because of her parents' relationships. I waited for a moment alone with Michael to show him the photos of his affair and sternly warned him. The affair is already uncovered, you know? And it seems the other woman is your ex-wife.
You took these secretly? You went to such lengths?
Don't laugh. I'm serious. Please, stop doing this.
Tell her, not me. She keeps insisting on getting back together. Everyone. Why are all the women around me so selfish?
Angry, Michael left despite my attempts to stop him. It felt like he was just pretending to be angry to dodge the issue. I realized I needed to investigate further how his relationship with Sharon rekindled. This situation is absolutely not right. Normally, shouldn't he distance himself from his ex-wife considering his current family? I am his partner now. I wish he would act with me and Emily as his priorities. I made this appeal to him. But every time we talked, he just looked annoyed. He wouldn't take me seriously. Gradually, I began to resent him and our marriage grew cold. Whenever I asked him to stop the affair, he'd retort, "Tell her." Thinking there was no end to this, I resolved to meet Sharon myself. I sent a letter to the address I had confirmed through the detective agency and called her to a cafe. The impact of meeting Sharon for the first time is unforgettable. The moment she saw me, she smirked triumphantly, as if to say she was far superior as a woman. "What do you want to talk about?" "I'm quite busy, so please make it quick." "Yes, you seem busy. Must be hard managing so many men at once. I'd like to learn your scheduling secrets." "What? You called me here to fight? If that's what you want, I'm game." Her response took me by surprise. Maybe because she looked down on me at our first contact. Uncharacteristically, I snapped back with a sarcastic remark. This wasn't right. I came here to have a rational discussion. Regaining my composure, I apologized to Sharon for my rude remarks. "I'm sorry. That was not right of me. I didn't mean it. Please, just don't see my husband anymore. It's not good for Emily's upbringing." "Oh, that's what this is about. Well then, how about you prepare $50,000 as a severance payment?"
Severance payment? Why should I be the one to pay that?
Aren't you the daughter of a wealthy family? Just cough it up. Oh, you can't? Wasn't this about Emily's education? No? Was your love for your daughter just lip service? What a spiteful woman. I didn't want to be lectured about love by someone who had abandoned her daughter like she did. Sharon's attitude seemed to reflect jealousy and anger towards me, a wealthy heiress. Her troubled past, being abandoned by her delinquent parents and shuffled among relatives, was evident. Ultimately, our discussion led nowhere. Sharon left without even paying for her coffee. When I told Michael about meeting Sharon, he simply said, "Oh, really?" I was furious. From around the time I met Sharon at the cafe, strange things began happening at home. Items frequently went missing. My clothes, bags, shoes, and jewelry were disappearing. Thinking this was odd, I confronted Michael and he replied, "I just borrowed them."
How can you just borrow them without asking? What did you do with them? Did you lend them to some other woman, perhaps Sharon?
What? That doesn't matter. It's none of your business.
It is my business. Imagine how I feel having my things borrowed without permission.
What happened to the borrowed items afterward? Unfortunately, the missing items never returned. I even spotted the same items in a marketplace once. Despite my persistent questioning, my husband claimed he didn't know or remember, eventually getting angry. I decided to store my belongings in locked cabinets, drawers, and closets. Speaking of keys, the key to the cottage had also mysteriously disappeared. It was the key to the cottage I used occasionally during my single days, borrowed from my father. When I confronted my husband, he reported that he had been using it as a getaway. The thought that it might have been used as a replacement for a hotel made me shiver. Our marriage continued to drift apart. The only thing keeping us connected was our daughter, Emily, who was finally getting married. Her fiancé was from the same university as her, 3 years older than her. He was already working and had been assigned a job transfer far away. He had asked Emily to marry him and move with him during their relationship. After graduating from university, Emily wanted to have the wedding immediately, and I sincerely congratulated her.
Emily, congratulations! I'm so happy for you.
Thanks, Mom. Everything is thanks to you. I'm really sorry. You've been through so much because of Dad. But you've always endured it for me. I know everything. That's why I'm so grateful. Emily. It's okay. This isn't something you should worry about. This is an issue between your father and me. Just focus on finishing your studies and have a happy marriage, okay?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mom. To be honest, I regret marrying my husband. But meeting my daughter was different. I'm thrilled to be her mother. It feels like a chapter will close when she builds her own happy family. I've decided to divorce my husband. These were my thoughts behind the scenes of my daughter's marriage talks. Later, Emily graduated from university as planned. She intended to support her husband as a homemaker after marriage. On the wedding day, Emily and I entered the venue first. Dressed in a wedding gown and made up beautifully, she looked stunning. I was moved to tears just looking at her. I couldn't wait for the ceremony to start. But then, what on earth was my husband doing? He had said he would come later, but he had not shown up at the venue even just before the ceremony was about to begin. I called him dozens of times on my phone right before the opening. Finally, my husband answered the call.
I finally got through. Where are you now?
Me?
I'm on a trip with my ex-wife.
I was speechless. What a terrible thing to do on such a day. On a trip with his ex-wife? How could you say that so blatantly? I felt my head boiling with rage.
Just make some excuse to the relatives and cover for me.
What? Do you realize? It's your daughter's wedding.
I know.
Tell Emily congratulations for me, won't you?
What a selfish man. The worst. I almost smashed my phone to the floor. But I couldn't lose my composure. It was my daughter's wedding. I lied that my husband couldn't come due to a sudden emergency and managed to get through it. I kept a calm smile, but inside, I was storming with anger towards my husband. A week after the ceremony, I received a call from my husband for the first time in a while. I had been ignoring him because it was annoying, but he kept calling persistently. It was a barrage of calls. Reluctantly, I answered, and as expected, he was very angry.
I finally got through. Where are you right now?
Why should I have to tell you that? It doesn't concern you.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. I am your husband, aren't I?
He arrogantly snapped, completely frenzied. His voice was so strained it was barely audible. But it was somewhat expected. After all, I had leveled his house.
Coming back to no house, how could you possibly do that? What did you do with it?
I just demolished it because it was old. Of course, I consulted with your father first. A contractor friend cleared it in 2 days. I'm thinking of putting that land on the market.
What about my stuff? My clothes and everything else? Where did all that go? You didn't just throw them away or sell them, did you? Because that would be unforgivable.
Considering you've been taking people's things without permission and lending or selling them, you're one to talk, right?
But don't worry, all your belongings are safely stored somewhere.
Relieved, my husband sighed heavily. It seems he was very worried about what had happened to his belongings. He was probably anxious that I might have disposed of them. Tell me where it's kept, give it back now, he demanded, barking more than asking. Everything was going according to plan.
If you want to know, you'll have to divorce me first. What? Divorce? Are you fine with Emily growing up with just one parent?
Appalling.
How long are you planning on using that excuse? Emily is already an adult.
Trying to tie me down now by bringing up our child is absurd. Of course, Emily knows that I've been considering divorce. I've discussed it with her father as well. There's no need to hesitate in kicking this man out of my life.
Accept the divorce first. Then we'll talk. If you really dislike that idea, you will lose all your precious belongings. Do you still want to remain married to me that badly? Are you crazy? Who would want to be with a woman like you?
I thought so.
Sharon is prettier, isn't she? So, what will it be? Will you accept the divorce, or would you rather throw everything away? I need you to decide quickly. Fine. If it's divorce you want, it's divorce you'll get.
My husband must have been vaguely thinking about my father's inheritance. Staying married to me might someday make him very rich. But my father is still very healthy. He looks like he could live to be 100. Who knows when that someday will come, and our relationship is only getting worse. He must have made his decision after weighing various considerations about gains, losses, and future expectations.
I'll sign the divorce papers or anything. Where are you living now? I'll come to you.
Tell you my address? I can't do that.
What if you show up uninvited or start stalking me? I'll contact you later about when and where we can meet. Don't get all high and mighty. Who do you think you are, Kelly? You know what, just remember this. You might want to think about whether you're really in a position to be raising your voice. Do you even understand how angry I am after all the unilateral decisions you've made so far?
He had taken too many liberties, ignoring my feelings entirely. As a result, our relationship was irreparably damaged. I had tried to reconcile for the sake of our daughter, but he repeatedly pushed me away. He and his still-connected ex-wife deserved some form of retribution. A few days later, I called my husband and told him to bring his ex-wife and come to my parents' house. When they arrived on the appointed day, both my husband and his ex-wife looked suspicious. Like stray cats who had unwittingly wandered into someone else's territory. They were lost, scared, and confused. They should have acted more confidently. But perhaps it was too much for them. Before them sat my father, looking grim as if he were about to unleash thunder. The fear was palpable on Sharon's face as she met my father for the first time. Before we discuss the divorce, there are a few things I need to clarify. Michael, you've been using our family cottage without permission, haven't you? Along with Sharon here, right?
Well, I used it, but not without permission, right? Kelly knew too, didn't she?
Don't act as if I had given my consent. You just took the keys and used it, informing me unilaterally afterward, didn't you? You two have been trashing our cottage, haven't you? Never cleaning up after yourselves?
Well, I plan to clean up the next time we used it.
When I was contacted by the cottage management company about the disarray, I was shocked. My husband and his ex-wife had left the place a total mess, with all kinds of trash just strewn about. Clean up next time? That was clearly a lie. They probably thought it would be fine just to leave it for me or the management company to clean up.
Moreover, it seems that some equipment was damaged by objects hitting it, and the floors and tables are dirty with stains from drinks and food. I've also been told it smells strongly of tobacco overall. Did you smoke in that cottage? I had hung a valuable painting I bought when I was younger.
About that, Dad. It seems that the paintings you collected aren't hanging in the cottage anymore. These two seem to have sold them off at an online auction.
What? How could they do such a thing? After all the trouble I went through to collect them.
I was shocked when I found out. I couldn't believe that my husband and his ex-wife would go as far as to do that. The grief my father felt from having his precious painting collection sold off was profound. The fury in my eyes when I addressed my husband was palpable. He was at a loss for words.
What's this about? Did I give you those paintings at the cottage? I don't recall ever discussing that. Well, I'm so sorry. It was a moment of folly.
Return of the paintings or compensation for the damage. Payment for the repairs needed to restore the cottage to its previous state. All these costs will be billed to you, my father stated solemnly. What else could my husband do but nod? But my father's words didn't end there.
Michael, you received a loan from me, remember?
Yes, about $50,000. You lent it to me.
What did you do with it? Wasn't it supposed to be for a new business venture? I haven't heard any follow-up. It hasn't fizzled out, has it?
Well,
my husband faltered, obviously struggling to say something. He was sweating profusely, unable to keep his gaze steady. Seeing my husband's pathetic state, my father sighed in exasperation.
Be honest. That business venture was a lie, wasn't it? You received the loan under false pretenses. If you didn't know, let me inform you that what you did could be considered fraud.
No, that's not true. I didn't mean it like that.
Was the business plan also a lie? Fraud is a serious crime, you know? You could face up to 10 years in prison. There are no fines, only mandatory labor if convicted.
I'm so sorry. I lied.
Finally, my husband apologized. He must have realized that lies and excuses weren't going to work anymore. He admitted that the business plan was a fabrication. The loan he received was apparently used for something else.
Used for something else? What exactly did you spend it on? Well, this woman begged me, and I used it to pay off her debts. What? You used the money I entrusted to you for something like that? Hey! Traitor! You promised you wouldn't talk about that.
His ex-wife yelled. What can I do? My husband retorted. My father heaved a heavy sigh. I was too dismayed to speak. He had used the money I helped him borrow to pay off his ex-wife's debts? Unbelievable. How could someone be so irresponsible? Whether it's true or not, the ex-wife also had no right to blame my husband. They were both despicable. At that moment, the living room door quietly opened. It was my daughter, Emily. After I told her about today's discussion, she wanted to be involved. She had been listening to our exchange for a while and looked utterly disheartened. Seeing her, the ex-wife stood up gleefully.
Emily! You were here too! I wanted to see you! I'm your mother!
You're not my mother. I appreciate that you gave birth to me, but that's it. I refuse to be considered family by someone like you.
Emily! How can you speak to your biological mother like that?
That's because she's not my mother.
And you?
Skipping your daughter's wedding to go on a cheating trip with your ex-wife, don't act like a father.
It was only natural for my daughter to be angry. She had already harbored resentment toward her father. This affair trip was just the breaking point for her. By now, both her father and his ex-wife were nothing but adversaries in her eyes.
Just so you know, my husband is the nephew of the chairman of the parent company where you work. He's very close and dear to him.
The chairman's? Emily, why didn't you tell me something so important?
I thought I did. If you didn't listen, that's on you. But at this point, it doesn't matter. I plan to cut ties with you as a parent.
Emily, don't say that.
My daughter is well aware of how much my husband has tormented me. She has had just as many unpleasant experiences as I have. Her resentment towards her father is significant. She intends to tell her husband everything, and my husband turned pale.
Stop it! What if the chairman glares at me?
If he glares, so be it. You've done enough to deserve it, haven't you?
In my eyes, as a daughter, you're the worst as a person, a parent, and a man. Emily, stop that. Don't speak to your father like. Don't act like a mother. I will never acknowledge you two as my parents.
The many disgraceful acts of my husband will likely reach the chairman through my daughter's husband. And from the chairman to the president, and from the president to his immediate supervisor, impacting his reputation at work. My husband was already on the verge of tears. But it's too late for regrets. There's no stopping my daughter now. She then turned her sharp gaze to her birth mother.
Mom told me that you've been involved with other men besides my father. And not just one, many. You've been lying about your age and continuing those relationships, haven't you? Well, I won't say it's not true. Thinking that I share the same blood as someone like you makes living unbearable. Promise me you won't show your face to me ever again. Got it? Okay.
The ex-wife looked feeble. To her, my daughter was probably seen as a safety net for times of need. Her plans to lean on her if anything happened clearly backfired. My daughter despises her birth mother to the core. Whether it's her biological mother or not, being disliked ends it all. Seeing the disheartened ex-wife, I decided it was time to deliver her the final blow.
I'm going to inform your affair partner's spouses about your infidelity. Is that okay? What? Hey, stop. By what right do you do such a thing? If you dislike that, compensate for the damage you and my father have caused us. Split the costs with him. Me, split with Michael?
Why act surprised? Did she think she could escape the troubles alone? The unauthorized sale of items. The mess made at the cottage. And the emotional damage. The damage we suffered from my husband and his ex-wife was substantial. I declared my intent to hire a lawyer to detail the damages and demand compensation. As my husband signed the divorce papers, the ex-wife continued to sob miserably. Our divorce was finalized a few days later. I gave him the password to the storage where his belongings were kept and billed him for the usage period. How much of a deadbeat he was at home, a nuisance to his wife and child. His true nature reached the president through Emily's husband and the chairman, spreading rapidly within the company. Especially shocking to the employees was the fact that he went on a trip with his ex-wife on the day of his daughter's wedding. Unthinkable as a parent. Deeply flawed as a person. Such bad reputation circulated widely. If the employees were making a fuss, it was inevitable that the business partners heard as well. That company houses the worst kind of man. Rumors grew maliciously, cornering my ex-husband. He resigned half a year after our divorce due to the disdainful looks from those around him. Just moving to another company and starting anew wasn't an option. Given his age, re-employment wasn't easy. Despite applying to many places, he remained unemployed, time just passing by. He faced a lawsuit for damages from my father, and I demanded alimony. With no savings left. My ex-husband struggled financially, got caught shoplifting, and ended up in police custody multiple times. The ex-wife's life became miserable as well. She was jointly liable for the payments to my father and me. She failed in her attempts to get her affair partners to pay up. Moving too boldly, her infidelity was discovered by their partners. As a result, she faced forcing her to work even though she had been unemployed up to that point. She tried to leverage her looks in the nightlife industry, but it was tough. It wasn't an easy world for a woman in her 50s to jump into as a newcomer and survive. The strong-willed ex-wife caused trouble with the younger staff wherever she went and was eventually ostracized. In the end, she had no choice but to rely on her ex-husband, moving into his place to scrape by. One day, the two of them appeared before me as I was returning from work, pleading about how hard they were struggling.
We're working 2 to 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet.
I'm struggling too. I can't even afford to go to the hair salon anymore, nor can I buy new clothes.
Kelly, please help us. Just let us talk to your father. We get turned away at the gate. No one will listen to our new business idea.
As they should. What new business? Who would believe such a lie at this point?
My ex-husband passionately defended that it wasn't a lie. To me, it didn't matter. It was irrelevant. Even if his story was true, either my father nor I were interested in listening. I despise my ex-husband and don't even want to see his face. When I bluntly shared these thoughts, he burst into tears. The ex-wife had already been crying. It was pitiful to see grown adults sniveling in the street at dusk.
You've made your bed, now lie in it. Go back home. Both of you, never appear before me again.
I sharply dismissed them. Their lonely figures turned their backs to leave. Yet, I felt no sympathy for them. Instead, I thought it served them right. I hope they continue to regret their actions for a lifetime and experience the depths of debt-ridden life. Later, my daughter had a child. Now, she sends me pictures of my grandchild every day. While there's no blood relation, that child is undeniably precious to me. I intend to continue watching over my daughter and her family's happiness from a distance. Being entangled with such a worthless man was a waste of a part of my life. However, I am grateful that it led me to meet my daughter. For her sake, and for my grandchild's, I plan to keep living a healthy life, both mentally and physically.